All right, now we're going to jump into a time lapse where we're um, just working on the back area of the car. So I'm gonna try to walk you through this as I go, but I feel like there's going to be more time lapses happen as we kind of progress through this. I think when you're at the point that we're at now, you should have the skills and ability to sort of make your own decisions and sort of progress forward. But I still think it's important to kind of see a loose approach of how I do some of this stuff. And you'll notice that one of the things I do quite often is I'll use like an existing piece of geometry to make like a new piece of geometry. That's just easier to me. And I think it makes more sense and it's more efficient if than making like an entirely new piece of geometry and starting from that. It's just a little streamlined to me anyway. This video is about 400% sped up, so it's quite fast. You can slow it down. If you do, I would recommend just kind of watching it and listening to the things I have to say about it, and then going back and maybe slowing it down. And if you need to follow step by step. But yeah, I think that when you get to this point, you should have the skills to kind of progress forward. I added that little detail right there. I'm not sure. I didn't keep it. I just wanted to see there is a little bit of a seam there on my reference. So I just wanted to see how that would look if I did add that in. And I'm just kind of playing around with the geometry, rerouting the geometry. There's a little bit of like a weird bend right in there, but I'm not super concerned about it. I think a lot of times once you get these things lit and textured, it will hide a few of those, like the very subtle sort of inconsistencies and the very subtle sort of bends and undulations you have in your surface. Those things, once you get it fully lit and textured, those things won't be as visible. And I think it's important to note that like the car, right? Most cars, especially these classic cars, they aren't perfect, right? They don't, they're not like perfect creations, right? They don't have perfectly smooth surfaces. But they have the car paint and stuff just makes the light sort of reflect off of it in a way where it looks really nice and smooth and clean. But in reality, they're not super smooth surfaces. Now that's a little bit different with modern cars because they're sort of mass produced in a way where machines make them, and machines have really good accuracy, a lot more than humans. But just like the tolerances and things like that weren't as great back in the 70s and 80s as they are now. So that's why I kind of enjoy doing classic cars. I've done a few modern cars in my time as well. But I enjoy doing classic cars just because, I don't know, I feel like you just have a little bit more freedom to kind of have fun with them. Whereas modern cars are very sort of structured in the way that they're built. Also, a lot of these classic cars are heavily modified, right? So if you do, when we get to the part where I'm making the front bumper, you'll see that I kind of have a little bit of creative freedom with it, and I don't do exactly what I think the reference is showing me. I find a couple different reference images, and I just kind of give myself a little creative freedom to do what I want with it. You may see here me pause, or you may see like little moments of time where nothing happens. Uh, I could very well just be watching YouTube or something and not paying attention to what I'm doing. That's very likely. But I'm also looking for reference. So you'll see me pull in some more reference images into my peer ref reference, and I think that's a very important thing to do. Right? Um, you should constantly gather reference. Like once you have your reference, it's not like, okay, there's all my reference, I'm not going to get any more reference, right? If you can't really tell what's going on, go and look for more reference. Look up specific parts of your car, right? So Google, if you're working on sort of like the side view mirror, for example, and in our case, in my case here, we're working on a 1972 Ford Pinto. So just look up like 1972 Ford Pinto side view mirror and find some close up images of that. I mentioned this before, but I do plan on modeling the interior of this car at some point. I don't know if I'll make it a part of this series or do a separate series or maybe just add on to it later. But for now, I really just want to get the exterior all set up and looking good. But that's why I'm going in and I'm kind of paying attention to some of these areas like right here, because I do plan on doing the interior at some point. So why not just go ahead and deal with this while I'm there? At least that little part right there. Yeah, here's where I'm actually looking for reference, and I'm just noticing there's a difference between some of these cars, and I think they're just different year models. But some of them have like a little silver latch on that hatchback, and some of them don't. So that's at some point there's a decision I have to make if I want to have that little detail in there or not. Okay, so this is where I start diving in and building out the bumper, and this is something that I kind of go back and forth on a little bit. There's areas of this that there's different versions of this car, I think, that I'm looking at in reference. The one we're looking at currently at the bottom left, in that one, the bumper just sort of comes straight out of the body of the car, and we're talking about the paint, the car paint bumper area, not the chrome bumper. And then you'll see where I find other versions where it kind of sticks out to the side a little bit, and I kind of go back and forth a little bit. Right now, I'm just kind of building in that inside area of the headlight. I also notice at some point that my headlight it seems like it's tilted a little bit on my model. I have it kind of straight, talking about like the facing angle of the headlight. I have it straight vertical. I think it's actually tilted a little bit just looking at my reference, and it's not something I've changed yet. It's just something I'm noticing as I'm working on it at this point. And I may at some point go in and try to change that. But I'm not sure. I don't think it's a big deal. I don't think it's going to like make or break my model. So it's just something I might try to change it at some point, and if it doesn't look great, I'll back up and undo it. But it is something that I noticed, and I'm just keeping that in mind. So Yeah, so I'm noticing there's a bit of an angle to that seam. It's not straight up and down. And you can see that there's just not really any information to go off of in my orthographic views. Now, depending on the car that you're choosing to do, you could have much better orthographic views. But in this case, I kind of purposely chose orthographic views that weren't great. Just to kind of illustrate the fact that you shouldn't rely too heavily on them. They will, what's more important is your photographic reference, right? Checking your photographic reference, analyzing it, right? I'm not just talking about looking at it. It's not going to seep into your brain just from looking at it, staring at it long enough. You need to really get in there and analyze it and try to understand the forms and shapes and things like that. To model, right? And you're probably not going to get things perfect, right? You're not going to be able to translate all of those forms and shape identically the way that they are on the car, but you'll have a much better, it'll be more accurate the more you sort of study and analyze your reference images, as opposed to just kind of making things up as you go. And, even though we are using some creative freedom, we still want this to look like an actual Ford Pinto, right? I want someone to be able to look at this and say, that's a 1972 Ford Pinto, or 1970, somewhere around 1970 Ford Pinto. I often see people model really cool cars with no concept or no reference, right? They just kind of on the fly model those cars, but those cars aren't cars that exist in real life, right? Because they're just kind of making things up as they go. And I also want to point out that most likely those people have a lot of experience modeling, so they kind of know what they're doing with modeling. Here's one of those moments that I'm probably just like looking at Google trying to find reference images. Yeah, I think my point is that I think it's important to sort of learn how to model things that exist in reality. When you're first learning, there's nothing wrong with just having fun, making things up and just kind of modeling, just learning to model, right? No reason to jump in and immediately get super technical and like you need to model something hyper realistic right when you first start. When you first start, you should just be kind of learning the software and the concepts and theories of modeling. You don't need to worry about technical aspects so much. And I would definitely say this series, this car modeling thing, is definitely an intermediate level, if not an advanced level of modeling. So I'm not sure where I was going with that point. But yeah, I'm just checking. I'm just looking for reference. I'm trying to figure out what all these details look like. So I'm just, basically looking for new images on figuring out these little details. And I think what I end up here with is sort of like an amalgamation of the two different versions of that bumper, because there is one bumper that kind of sticks out on the sides a little bit, and then there's one that it's kind of even with the sides. And I actually find like an aftermarket bumper, you'll see here in a few minutes, and I find that, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I want to have that. I want to have that on my model, because I think that would just be like a fun little detail to model in. So the end result of this is more along the lines of like an aftermarket bumper than what would be the stock bumper that came with this car. And I think what you'll see me doing here a lot with this bumper is just figuring things out again, where I'm just trying to do something. I'm taking a look at it, assessing the situation, how it looks, and then deciding if I want to keep it. And you'll see me do that quite a bit with this front bumper in particular. So here I am again, kind of looking for reference. See, there's the one that kind of sticks out to the side. So I'm like, okay, I need to model it. But then the red one, it's kind of even with the side. So I spend some time just being a little bit confused about what's actually going on with the bumper. Because that red one, I eventually figure out that red one does not stick out the way that the blue one does, but it's hard to tell, right? So yeah, it's just one of those situations where I'm confused about what to do, but it's better to just do something, right? What you don't want to happen is to be confused about how a detail looks, and then and let that sort of paralyze you and not do anything, right? Just do stuff, right? That's like one of the best pieces of advice I can give you if you're 3D modeling, is just do something. Don't let indecision rule you, and don't let the fear of making the wrong decision sort of rule you. Just make a decision, do it. And if it's the wrong decision, and if at some point you realize that you don't like it, or it looks better another way, it's not, you can change it. It's not the end of the world. This is that aftermarket bumper that I found, and I was like, oh, that's really cool. I want to have that little scoop or fin at the bottom. So that's what I end up deciding to model in there. I was mentioning at the beginning that you will probably do more of these time lapses, because there's just going to be a lot of busy work moving forward, where I'm not really doing anything new. I'm just kind of modeling and creating the things the way that I've been going about this whole time, right? So I don't want to waste your time or my time just kind of going over the same things over and over again. So I'm kind of talking through this one now, and I'm going to try to talk through all the time lapses when I do time lapses, but there may be some points where you're just sort of watching me work. I think one of the most important things I've learned over the years to model for modeling is to try to use the geometry that you have, rather than like constantly creating new geometry or trying to use booleans for everything. And a lot of what I'm doing is just getting in there and moving things around. I think we've talked about this before, but a lot of people, when they're just starting out, they want to just use functions for everything. Oh, what's the function to do this, or what's the function to do that? They want to use extrude or bevel to just model everything as if everything is a tool function, right? To me, that's not really what 3D modeling is. 3D modeling is getting in there, doing what I'm doing now, and grabbing edges, moving edges around, bridging them together, moving individual verts. There's a lot of really cool tools to use, but at the end of the day, they're not gonna, all those different tools are not what makes you a good 3D modeler. For example, if there was no bridge tool, right? That doesn't mean I couldn't bridge surfaces together. I would just have to do it a different way. I would need to extrude one over to the other. And if there was no target weld tool, that doesn't mean I can't target weld vertices together. I would just need to merge them together a different way, right? So don't start relying too much on these tools. that you have and focus on the concepts, right? The tools are great and the tools will speed up your time, speed up your workflow. But at the end of the day, they're not adding anything to your skill set. They're just sort of a different paintbrush, if you will. So here I'm making that little fin. And I just start by extruding out and then deleting. There I tried to bridge up that surface and you saw that it twisted. So if you want to back up and look at that again, you saw that surface twisted around when I tried to bridge it up. That's because the normals aren't facing the same direction. So I think I had to go in and reverse them. And you'll see me do that again on the rear bumper at some point. I needed to reverse the normals. The normal is, for the most part, normals are just the direction that your polygons are facing. Your polygons, generally speaking, only have one side. That's why the inside of my car is black and the outside is gray. That black side is the inside of the polygon, which doesn't really have any surface quality unless you turn on two-sided lighting or something like that. So here I modeled out that fin, and I'm kind of starting to like what I have so far. And I do think that looks really cool, that bottom fin scoop. It also kind of hides the undercarriage of the car. One thing about car modeling, when you're just modeling the exterior of the car, there's a lot going on underneath the car, like your transmission and exhaust and wires and steering column and all that stuff. So if you're not prepared to model all that, you have to kind of find a way to mask it or hide it from the view of the car. So completely unintentional. That's not why I modeled that scoop. I just modeled it because I thought it looked cool. But now that I'm thinking about it, I'm realizing that that's going to help hide the undercarriage of the car if I don't, if I just want to do some nice renders of it and not model like the rear differential or like the steering columns or exhaust or things like that. So here I'm deciding that I like it better when it's even with the side of the car and it's not sticking out. So I like the version there that we're looking at on the bottom left, that orange one, is an angle where you can see that it's not sticking out on the sides. So it's kind of even with the car. So I think I just ended up deciding that I like that a bit better. So that's what I'm going with. So, it's a good example of just you can have creative freedom. There's no one that's going to be standing over your shoulder and saying, oh, that's not an accurate Ford Pinto. This thing is 2 centimeters high here. And I think, again, that's one of the great things. That's why choosing these classic cars are so great, is because a lot of them have so many aftermarket parts that they're all going to be slightly different. Now, if you're modeling like a modern day a BMW or something like that, like a 2025 BMW, those are, in a lot of ways, you would think newer cars would be more difficult because they look smoother and they look rounder. Or you'd think they'd be easier, but in a lot of ways they're much more difficult. So because they have a lot more profile curves, right? There's a lot more complex shapes and profile curves that happen on a modern car that happened on a classic car, because now we have robots and machines and things like that can manufacture all those really complicated shapes. Back in the day, we weren't that sophisticated where we could model, where we could manufacture those really complicated shapes. So I think I got the front sort of plastic bumper modeled, and now moving on to the rear bumper. So I'm just kind of fleshing it out a little bit. And you're about to see me use something that I'm trying to use more often. I used to, so say if in the past, if I wanted like a part of the model to kind of duplicate a part of the model, but not extract it, so to speak, I would duplicate the entire model and delete everything else, except for that area. So that area that I have selected there, in the past, I would just duplicate the model and delete everything but that. But this time, what I do, you do have a duplicate function. So if you select those faces, you can go to Edit Mesh Duplicate, and then you'll just duplicate those faces. So that's what I end up doing right there. And it proved to be very useful. Then I'm extruding it out. You'll notice that the black is on the outside. So you just saw me reverse the normals. So the black is on the inside and gray is on the outside. I can't remember, but I think I model this up to a certain point, and then I just delete the whole thing and do it over again. So another great example of, see, I just deleted it and I decided to do it again with a little bit more attention to detail, I guess. So another good example of just how, you try something. If you don't like the way it looks, you try something else. Delete the interior of that because it's not going to be visible. I did a little bevel on the corner mainly to hold its shape there. And then I do like a little bit of a profile curve for the outside. And then I'm just going to use my bridge tool, reduce the geometry a little bit to make things a little bit more easier, and then use my bridge tool and bridge all that stuff up. And then there's that part where you see the license plate. That's going to be an interesting challenge. See how my model just went transparent right there? If that happens, all you have to do is reassign your material. It also happens sometimes where your model will just go green. Again, just reassign your material and that will fix that issue. So I'm just extruding out the little flat area where our license plate's going to go, and just kind of thinking about it. And just trying to figure out the logistics of the poly count there. And it's starting to look okay. I need to sharpen up some corners a little bit, but I think I would maybe even move out the edges there a little bit more. But I'll do that in a future video if I decide to do that. I think I decide that corner is too sharp, so I'm just bringing that down a little bit to round it out a little bit, and I think that's it. I think I've got the front bumper and the rear bumper, and we're good to go to the next step of the video, or the next video.